The faster you demonstrate proficiency in the contacts, get those early flights to be good grades, will help distinguish you from your peers. The most successful students are those that surround themselves with others that are giving it 110%.
Most pilots don't understand what career opportunities are available in the world of aviation. They're making career decisions based on advice from friends or posts on internet forums, meaning they are taking huge risks with their livelihood without having all the details. This podcast was created to help you understand the aviation industry so you can find your dream job. Let's get ready for Pushback. Here's your host and my dad, Nick Fialka.
All right, pilot, welcome back to Ready for Pushback, another interview edition. My name is Nick Fialka. Today, I'm talking with Colonel Anthony Krockel, call sign Fez from the United States Marine Corps. He is the Commodore of Training Wing 5 in Pensacola, Florida. And we talk all about how to become a Goldwinger, how to become a pilot in the Marines, in the Navy, in the Coast Guard. Do you think that flying is in your blood? Do you want to go and join the military and be a part of aviation with gold wings on your chest? This is a great interview because we unpack every single part of basic primary flying and talk you through the whole process. It's an hour plus of just really great information. Enjoy the conversation. So sit back, relax. Let's get ready for Pushback. Hey, pilot, did you just get a new conditional job offer? Are you getting out of the military and going to move your family across the country? Are you going to move in base somewhere, or are you going to go out to find that second home that you've been looking for? Well, I want you to stop right now, pick up the phone, and call Marty and the team at Trident Home Loans. It's an organization that's run by pilots. They understand pilot pay. They understand contracts. They understand military. They have the best VA loans in the United States. Marty and his team have been doing mortgages for years. They've been doing my mortgages for years. I trust him and his team more than any other organization. I challenge you to get a better deal anywhere else. Go ahead, reach out, get a mortgage quote, and then call Marty and his team. They will walk you through the process and show you how competitive their rates are. So go right now, tridenthomeloans.com, and check them out. All right, pilots, here we are. Today is a fun day for those of you aspiring to wear wings of gold. I am talking to the Commodore of Training Wing 5 at Whiting Field in Pensacola, Florida. Actually, lovely Milton, Florida, which is right outside of Pensacola. Colonel Anthony Fez Krockel. Colonel, how are you, sir?
Hi, I'm great. Thanks, Nick, for asking.
Man, this is so fun to have you. I know we've been playing phone tag for a long time. I can't believe you reached out to me. This is so cool.
Yeah, well, I've been listening to your podcast for months now.
Heck yeah. Heck yeah. I wonder if the Commandant listens to my podcast. I should have asked him when I saw him. He probably does while he's doing pull-ups. All right, man. We are going to talk. Today's focus is all things aviation. If you're considering joining the Navy, joining the Marine Corps, joining the Coast Guard, this is our bucket today. And we're going to pace through it and give you a bird's eye view. Also, stick around at the end because we're going to talk about a really amazing new thing that's coming out. Believe it or not, like DoD has innovation happening and things are moving. And we're going to talk about the newest, latest, and greatest stuff that's coming down the pike for training with Navy, Marine Corps, and Coasties. So, Colonel, if I am a college student or maybe high school student, I want to go to the Naval Academy, or maybe I want to go to any college and join the military and be a Goldwinger, right? If you don't already know, when you graduate from Pensacola, whether you're Marine, Navy, or Coastie, you get gold wings on your chest, and that's a very important thing. So we call them Goldwingers. What is the process? If I'm considering it, like, what do I need to think about doing?
Sure. So I guess we can start with the prerequisites. First, you need to be a U.S. citizen. Second is you need to have a bachelor's degree from an accredited college or university. And then you need to reach out to an officer recruiter for the service. And They're going to lead you down the path. There's a number of things that you'll need to do, the least of which include what they call an aviation selection test battery. So that'll give the service an idea of what your aptitude is for aviation. The second thing would be a physical. Once you get past those two things, and they'll collect other information such as, your GPA, college, that sort of thing, you will be boarded through a selective process for aviation.
Where did you go to college?
I went to UCLA.
UCLA. So you did not go to the Naval Academy.
I did not. I did, however, attend ROTC there.
You did. Why did
Yes.
you do that? Why did you want to do that?
So actually, I enlisted in the Navy in 1993, right out of high school. And I attended a program, basically a prep school called the Broadened Opportunity for Officer Selection and Training. That was a 10-month, basically a community college course taught in a military atmosphere, which prepped you for either going to a ROTC university or the Naval Academy. I elected to stay a civilian for just a little bit longer and attend ROTC at UCLA. My hometown is Torrance, California, so that kept me close to my family at the time.
Yeah, that's cool. Did you live at home while you're doing that, or were you living out on campus or in town?
I did both. The first year I lived at home, and then after that I lived just off campus.
Okay. And then you joined the Marines. You had to go, also, if anybody's going to join the Marine Corps, you're going to have to go to the basic school in Quantico, Virginia for 6 months before you do anything, before you ever get to Whiting Field, right?
That's right. And whether you you have to go first through Officer Candidate School in Quantico. Officer Candidate, there's a couple of different flavors of Officer Candidate School. There's a 6-week program if you attend ROTC or the Naval Academy. There's a program called Bulldog. Or there's a longer course, either a 10-week platoon leaders course, I think it's called, or 2 6-week courses, but don't quote me on that, between your junior and senior years. And then after that, after your senior year, you come back, then you will attend the basic school. Now, most of the aviation's folks will already know that they're getting aviation before they show up to the basic school. So they're not competing against their peers, for that aviation contract to come to Pensacola.
Yeah, that's important. And for the Navy folks, you end up going to Officer Candidate School, and unless you go through an ROTC function at your college of choice, then you jump in. I think everybody still funnels to NAS Pensacola. Is that right?
That's right. We start here at NAS Pensacola, and the very first thing you'll do is you'll go through aeromedical professionals, and you'll work through a pretty robust physical process.
Man, that thing's so damn long. I mean, for crying out loud, I remember they measure your body. They measure every piece of you.
So we have an anthropomorphic requirements. So believe it or not, a minimum weight requirement for an ejection seat, a maximum weight requirement for ejection seat. They measure the length of your arms. You want to make sure that your legs are long enough to reach the rudder pedals. So yes, absolutely. It is pretty thorough and extensive.
I remember when I went through, I was actually disqualified from one aircraft. And I thought when they're like, you're disqualified, my heart sank. And they're like, you're disqualified from the Prowler. I was like, oh, well, there's no way I'm getting jets anyway. So. You never know. They give you EKGs. They do all the things. They measure your forehead to see if you scowl enough, like all those things. And then once you're done with that, then it's time to get down to business, right?
Sure. Right. So you'll attend what's called the Navy Introductory Flight Evaluation. And that's done it's actually a contractor called Sky Warrior out of Pensacola International.
Yeah, the Sigler family.
Right. And Knife 1 will be academics. So you'll learn about, navigation, you'll learn about jet turbine engines, you'll learn about weather. And that's basically your ground school, right?
I'll tell you that if you have never been in aviation before, it is a really, really hard course. It is a lot of studying. I think there's at least one test a week. Sometimes there's 2 tests a week. You have to get an 80 or above to pass them. And depending on the needs of the military, if you fail one, you could be shown the door, or maybe you get a second shot. It just depends on your time frame.
Right. Following that, we have something that you and I did not experience when we went through our flight school, is what's called Knife 2. And Knife 2 is 9 hours and 7 flights in a Cessna.
Okay.
And that is also done by the folks there at Sky Warrior.
So they're doing that at Pensacola Regional. And so every student comes through and does that.
Correct.
Is there studying involved in this? Is it just kind of like, hey, let's go up and fly and have some fun?
No, absolutely. So yeah, there is attrition that happens out of the knife too. So we do experience attrition for folks who are either one, not aeromedically adapted, right? So in other words, they're just getting really, really sick in the plane.
Yeah.
We have other folks who may not just have the academic aptitude for the amount of studying that's required for the course, for the curriculum there.
Yeah. When you get to flight training in the military, there's this level of seriousness with studying that, I mean, I certainly did not experience in college. And there's a rigor that is surprising when you first get it and you get punched in the face with it. And it's doable. It is doable. Well, we'll talk about that later. But I do think you need to really be prepared to give it 110%, because there's nothing worse than just getting there and then not giving it your all and ending up doing something you don't want to go do, because you're not leaving the military. You're still staying in.
That's right. We'll just find another job for you elsewhere. But I will tell you this, the most successful students are those that surround themselves with others that are giving it 110%. And when you want to find a group, a team of students, someone who's like 2 weeks ahead of you, so that they're kind of giving you the gouge. The gouge is sort of a Navy, Marine Corps, Coast Guard term. It's basically advice, right? Giving you the gouge for what to expect. And then you also want to have somebody that's about 2 weeks behind you so that you can pass that gouge along, because you don't really have a mastery of the material until you can teach it.
Yeah, it's all about lifting as you climb. When you are in flight school, it is all about lifting as you climb, because if you don't, first off, you're a jerk. And second off, it is helpful for you to regurgitate that information back to somebody, because you don't just do it once. Everything builds. You're just building a castle as you're going through. So as we finish Knife 2, which is probably the most intense word in flight school I've ever heard, then it's time to show up. It's time to either come and be under your umbrella or under the umbrella in Corpus Christi, Texas, right?
Correct. So that would be Training Wing 4. So there are 5 primary or basic flight school instruction squadrons. There's VT 27 and 28. That's in Corpus Christi, Texas, under Training Wing 4. And then the other 60% of the Naval Aviation Training Command's primary squadrons are here at Whiting Field under my purview. And so that would be at Training Wing 5. That's VT 2, 3, and 6.
So you've got VT2 is the doer birds. That's their little logo. VT3 are the Red Knights. Right. And then VT6, baby, are the shooters, which is my squadron.
That's right.
And I love that. I love that. Talk to me about what you can expect when you show up at Whiting. What can you expect?
Sure. When you show up to Whiting, you're coming from Knife 2. We do have a little bit of a wait here. I think it's most recently we're advertising. If you come from the Navy, it's about 5 or 6 months before you will start primary.
Wow.
That's just a little bit of a backlog we have in our T6 Texan, which is the aircraft that we fly, production. So
but that number ebbs and flows, right? So
Sure.
2 years from now, it might be totally different.
There's a bit of an accordion effect when it comes to this production, right? And so sometimes it shrinks, sometimes it grows. This is sort of the phase that we're in right now.
Are they just going to Floribama every day for 5 months? Like, what are we doing for 5 months?
we do have a number of students who enjoy Floribama, Seville, and the beach in the summer. Some things haven't changed since you and I went through flight school.
Yeah, I still think I'm not allowed at the Floribama today.
Yeah, mullet toss.
But really, are they getting jobs, like assigned duties, or are they just off for 5 months?
Sure. No, they are. So, the best students will take advantage of this time in order to get ahead.
Yeah.
Right. So they will get a hold of the gouge from one of their peers and start studying emergency procedures, start looking at systems, trying to get into the simulators. We have virtual reality simulators now that they have access to. The Marine Corps has a program called BLADE, right? It's very similar to KNIFE, right? We love our acronyms in the Navy, Marine Corps, and Coast Guard. That program is basically like a Head Start program, if you will. It is taught by and for Marines. More senior Marines will teach more junior Marines, and it's sort of a homegrown mentorship program that provides those lieutenants a little bit of a head start when they show up to training in primary.
So they're teaching them things about the T6 and about all the things you need to know?
Right.
Wow. That's smart.
Yeah.
That's awesome.
Just looking at smart ways to utilize that time off. The Navy has started a program called SNA, or Student Naval Aviator Junior Officer Course. That course does many of the same things, gives them an introduction to aviation, it gives them some idea of what to expect in primary, and then also gives some classes on overall professional development, what to expect in the fleet once they show up there.
Listen, Navy guys, I'm telling you, whoever's in charge of this program, I feel like you need to be teaching them course rules to the areas, and you need to be teaching them, like running them through emergency procedures, how to do stalls, how to do spins, like all those things. Because if you've got 5 months to jam that stuff in, think about how good they are going to be at flying that airplane. That is so cool. That's a great opportunity. The Marines are crushing it. That's a great idea. Okay, so my 5 months is finished. I'm ready to go. Do I just jump into the plane, or what do I do?
Sure. Yeah. So the first thing you'll start is ground school. So ground school is just exactly what it sounds like. You are in a classroom for a week and change, and you're learning aircraft systems, fuel, hydraulics, avionics, the turbine engine for the aircraft. You're getting an introduction to course rules that you mentioned earlier. The course rules are basically the way we navigate visually in and out of the very, very busy airspace that we have here. And then after that, put you in the simulators. Spend some time in the simulators. The first several simulators are literally just following the checklist, right? And it'll be call outs and readbacks, right? And you're learning basically the basic switchology of the plane, how to start it, how to handle emergency procedures on startups and that sort of thing. After that, you'll start some simulators with visuals, and those visual simulators will help you fly the course rules, fly in and out of we have some special use airspaces nearby that we do our work in. There's an alert area for the entire Pensacola area. And of course, there's a military use airspace here as well. Those visual simulators will help the student navigate in and out of that airspace. And then also, as you mentioned earlier, help them with their initial stalls and spins, what we call high work, and then down to the low work, which is what we call all our work in the pattern, in the landing patterns. And they'll do takeoff flap, landing flap, and no flap, pattern work. And you might do a dozen landings there and over the course of your flight. After that, at that time in the simulator, you'll go on and you'll have what we call your familiarization zero flight. And that you'll get the chance to meet your on-wing. And so your on-wing will be the instructor pilot. It could be Navy, Marine Corps, Coast Guard. Matter of fact, we also have international instructor pilots here who are part of our cadre. We have an Argentinian pilot here, and we also have a French pilot who is 100% integrated into our cadre of instructor pilots.
Timothy P. Pope is a certified financial planner dedicated to guiding professional pilots through smart financial planning. Whether it's saving for retirement, investment management, a seamless military transition, or strategic tax planning, Tim is your trusted financial partner. Also, you can join Tim as he leads engaging discussions on personal finance and strategies for professional pilots on the brand new Pilot Money podcast. Timothy P. Pope, helping professional pilots make the most out of life. I still have a picture of me and my Argentinian buddy Louis, who came in. He was the funniest guy, and every student loved to have him as their on-wing. Hey, Fam Zero, let me tell you, if you've made it this far, this is your first, Fam Zero is your first chance to impress your instructor. You're going to have this on-wing for at least a half a dozen flights, maybe a few more. And I still talk to my kids who are my on-wings. I still do. I love them all. And I talk to every single one of them. And they've been part of my life for 20 years. And I'll tell you, first off, you're going to have a great connection. Second off, you got to bring the heat. You're going to do a pre-flight on the plane, and you're going to do a walk around with them. He's going to, what's this? What's that? What's this? What's the limit for that? What's the limit for this? What are we looking for here? It's going to take like an hour and a half. You're just like, you get your ass kicked. And so if you are studied up and ready to crush, man, because usually what happens, my experience has been, as they do the walk around, the further you get to the second wing and toward the back of the plane, they're like more the knowledge base drops off. So
Sure. Yeah. If you impress your on-wing, you are off to a great start. And typically what you'll see, so you'll meet the on-wing. Your on-wing will be your mentor. He'll teach you how to fly. He or she will teach you how to fly. And it'll start with basic things. This is how you put on your survival gear.
Yeah.
This is how you fit test your oxygen mask. And then they'll walk out to the plane like you talked about. You'll do the walk around. You'll do the pre-flight. And of course, the IP will start out with some zingers, right? And if that student can answer the tough questions first, then the tone and the tenor of the rest of the pre-flight is just a lot more relaxed, right?
Yep. Come aggressive and bring some coffee, bring some Starbucks with you.
Right. So after FAM 0, you're off to the races. And I will tell you that you're going to wish you had more than 5 months to prepare for primary when it starts, because it is fast and furious.
God, it's so hard.
It's tough. So we go through a familiarization stage or a contact stage. That's where you're doing the high work and the low work that I mentioned earlier. You're also, toward the end, you're also introducing aerobatic work. So you're doing barrel rolls, you're doing split S's, you're doing loops, you're doing all of that, right? And then after your on-wing time, you spend about half a dozen flights, and then you go off-wing. So you'll find a different instructor that'll come in, provide you a different perspective, right? And then also evaluate you at a check ride for your solo.
Yeah, I think the idea here is you start out as a big rock and you're chipped away, and started to form into position with your on-wing. And then you're smoothed out and come into your final form with these 4 or 5 or 6 different instructors that give different perspective to make you a well-rounded, holistic pilot.
Sure. And I will tell you, I mean, you talked about the relationship between the IP and the students. IPs, their own reputation a lot of time hinges on how well they train their students for that very first off-wing flight.
Yeah, especially if you're a new instructor coming into the squadron. If you're listening to this and you're kind of like, what am I getting into? I'm going to go be an instructor. If you suck, if your kid fails the check ride, it's your fault. The end, period. It is your fault because you brought that man or woman forward and you set them up for failure. I mean, it just is what it is. And people are going to I'll get some hate mail for that. I went to it with a passion. I'm proud to say that of all my on-wings, everybody passed on their first shot. However, I did have 2 people quit the program before they got to their solo. And so that is what it is. And that's a personal choice. And I was a thorough and difficult instructor, I think, but I also try to raise them up and lift them up and find the way that they can be the best that they can.
Sure. Yeah, no, we see about 5% attrition. We see that for medical reasons. We see that also for drop on request, basically quitting. By the way, it's a volunteer career choice within the military. Once you join, we'll find you, if you even have a aviation contract, right? You can quit aviation anytime you want.
It's never too late to quit.
We actually encourage folks, right? If their heart's not into it, we actually encourage them to quit early.
Yeah.
It will help their longer term career implications so they can sort of establish their reputation and build experience in a different job sector. And then also, frankly, and perhaps even selfishly, it reduces the burden of production on us. I mean, we spend a tremendous amount of the taxpayer dollars and internal resources with the planes, instructor pilots, or IPs to create students. And we just really hate to see somebody drop or quit right at the very end.
Do you see that most of the attrition happens in primary, or do you see also attrition in advanced helicopters?
We see some attrition in advanced helicopters, but the majority of the attrition that we see for quitting anyway is definitely in primary.
Yeah. Okay.
So we mentioned the solo, right? So you conduct your solo. And what we do in the maritime services and Navy, Marine Corps, Coast Guard is we have a really cool ceremony. And I'm sure you have some great stories about this as an IP, and I'm bringing back some memories, I'm sure, Nick, is the tie cutting.
Yeah. I have my ties right over here. I got all my ties. It's important.
So we cut the tie, and we have there's an area here called ACES. It's basically a heritage room with a lot of really neat old photos and memorabilia from naval aviation. And the instructor pilot or the student will start out first. The student will tell a story about their instructor pilot, probably embellished. And then the instructor pilot will tell a story about the student. And Then at the conclusion of that, the tie will be cut. And that's a very sort of symbolic thing. The student will come with a tie around his flight suit, and the instructor will cut the tie. And it symbolizes the student's now ready to fly solo. Right?
Yeah.
It's kind of a neat story historically. So, pilots used to wear, these long scarves, right? And the student would sit up front and the instructor would sit in the back. And when the instructor wanted to get the student's attention, they would yank on the scarf, right? And when the scarf was no longer needed to be yanked on because the student's experience level was good enough, then there was no more yanking on the scarf.
I love it.
The scarf eventually changed to a tie. So the idea is the shorter you cut the tie, the better off the student. The longer you cut the tie, i.e. the more likelihood that you had to yank it still,
That's right.
The not so good was, experience for the student.
I've got a lot of different length ties. That's all I'll say. All right. So we finished our solo,
Sure.
And we're moving on to the next step, which is a lot of work still. We're still not done.
Right. So at this point, you can split off to two different stages. You can, depending on what is needed at the time from a production perspective. You can either go through and learn how to fly for close formation within other aircraft to include aerobatics, or you can go to an instrument phase. And then also, go ahead.
And either way, you still have to accomplish both.
You have to accomplish both, but you'll either start in one, finish a stage, and then start the other stage, or the opposite, right? And then at the very end, we have 2 flights in the current syllabus for visual navigation, day and night. And you'll also do what's called a night familiarization flight, where you learn how to do landings and emergency procedures at night as well.
Yeah, and then I remember the further you get toward the end, the more relief there is, and the less grilling you're getting from the instructors. So the more you continue to prove yourself, the more they give you grace.
Right. And one of the neat things that we do, and unfortunately we can't do this for every student, but we do offer a cross country, and I do a lot of cross countries here. And I'll tell you, the T6 is a very capable platform. I will do our cross countries in 1,000 nautical miles in any given direction from Pensacola. That takes me as far west as Denver, as far north as Chicago and then New York, and covers all of Florida to include Key West, which is where I was at for Fantasy Fest a few weeks ago.
Listen, and that's the point, is that you've got to accomplish, if you get a chance to go on your cross country, you're accomplishing a lot of instrument flying and things like that. And you're really learning, but you're doing it in the real world, and you're getting a taste of what that's like. And then once you get on the ground, like, it is time to celebrate and have a little bit of fun. And so you get to go do these things. And if you're really lucky, you'll do it in the wintertime, and all of a sudden a huge ice storm will come in and you'll be stuck out there for like 5-6 days. Ask me how I know. In Austin, Texas, with Chuck Minsky. And it's and the more aircraft you bring on a cross country, the bigger the boondoggle, the more fun you have. But
absolutely,
gosh, I can't tell it.
Yeah, as a matter of fact, we're doing a detachment for training. We're going to take about 20 planes in January to Key West, and we're going to spend an entire month there. So it's going to be a great experience for students and instructors alike. We're looking at going to Charleston, West Virginia in the summer. We're going to take another 20 planes there and spend another month there. Absolutely. We call Pensacola, we call it the cradle of naval aviation. This is where everybody starts, right? But getting folks out of all of those special use airspaces that I mentioned and course rules is exactly what we want to expose students to, that real world flying that you mentioned earlier.
Yeah, getting out of the bubble. There's this dome around Pensacola that, you get to fly, you get used to how it goes. But once you get out flying with the rest of the aviation world, it's different. It just is a different mindset. Okay, so we did our cross country, we did our formation. It's about time to get to selection, right?
That's right. So we have selections on Thursdays, every Thursday, and you will select with your peers, a group
It's
of
been
your
like
peers.
That for 50 years, every Thursday.
And we will, so it's your squadron peers, but with all all five squadrons, 3 again here in Pensacola and 2 in Corpus Christi. All of those students will pull together. All of their grades will be pulled together. And based on a normal bell curve, called a Navy standard score, right, we will select based off of the needs of the Navy, coupled with your desires, will put you into a track for either a strike platform, F-18s, F-35s, E-2s, that's something along those lines, or maritime, which are our P-8 aircraft, Poseidons, or tilt rotor, and that's tilt for Navy or Marine Corps, and then also for helicopters, which ends up being about 50% of this overall number of students that we select.
Do the Coasties still already know what they're getting when they start primary?
No, they'll select along with everybody else.
They also select.
However, the vast majority, the majority of their pilots are helicopter pilots, and maybe only a third of them are fixed wing.
Yeah, and I'll tell you, if you're wondering who you should choose, if you should join the military, you'll never meet a person in the Coast Guard that doesn't love their job, and that's all I'll say.
Yeah, no, and I'll echo that, frankly, because there is only one service of the 3 that we've mentioned today, of the maritime services, that are doing their mission day in and day out. They are rescuing people. They're fighting. They're doing the counter-narcotic mission. They're protecting our borders. I like to joke and I say, the rest of us are all training for a Super Bowl that hopefully we never get to play in.
Yeah, I need to reach out to Vince Hansen and talk helicopters with the Coast Guard. They're awesome. Vince, text me if you're listening. Okay, so I do want to buckle down here real quick. So you're doing all this flying. As the student goes through each flight, the student is graded. And are you still using the 1 to 5 scale? Okay, 5 being the best, like perfectly awesome, and 1 being like mouth breather. And so usually 3 or 4 is where you have to get to progress on to the next phase. And so all of this is gonculated in a computer program, and each flight is measured. At the end of it, it prints out what your score is. It gonculates out your final score. It's on a scale, I think 60, if I remember, is the highest. Is that correct?
80.
80 is the highest. Holy hell. And then based on that, you're racked and stacked with your peers. The people that finish at the same time as you, everybody has it. And then the military comes forward and says, hey, you have 10 people. I need 3 strike fighter people. I need this many heavy people. I need this many V-22s. I need this many helicopters. And then whether you're first or last, you're going to get something. And then you're just sent off. And is there a minimum score still to get jets?
There was a time that there was a minimum score period. There was a 35 NSS,
35
standard score requirement. That minimum score requirement has since gone away.
Millennials, man. Millennials.
The Marine Corps has a minimum score for jets, and that's a 52 NSS.
52. Okay.
And the Navy is comparable.
Okay. Got it. So I would say a couple things, like, where do you make your money? Let me just ask you. I'm not going to give my impression from 10, 15 years ago. Where do you make your money in your scores? Like, how do you get the best scores?
Well, first, it's what you said earlier. It's bringing your A game to the brief, where you're going to discuss the flight and maybe a specific system, right? And then it's the actual flight, right? But the bulk of your scores, right? So you're probably going to what's going to make you stand out is the faster you demonstrate proficiency in the contacts and get those early grades or those early flights to be good grades will help distinguish you from your peers. The second block I would say that's probably the most important is probably the formation flight block. And the reason for that was one of the missions for primary, if you will, is to help the services figure out who has an aptitude for flying jets, for flying, tactical aviation aircraft such as the F-35, right? So we have a formation flight phase, which is, I guess, weighted a bit more than some of the other phases for grades.
That's good information right there. And I want to touch on something that you said. The brief, when every single flight that you do, you're going to have a brief. And there's going to be a list of things that you are going to have to speak about. And they want you to talk on a PhD level about this stuff. They expect this, the instructor expects the student to come in early and put all of this information on a whiteboard and then brief the instructor and then answer a million questions and just knock it out of the park and talk word for word what emergency procedures are. Talk through a system. You're a drop of fuel and you're going through the fuel system, and they get deep in the weeds. And another thing is they want you to walk through a spin, and they want you to talk about exactly how many degrees nose up, what your power setting is, what you're expected to do when this happens, then that happens, then this, then that, then this, then that, then this. And if you say it robotically and you knock it out and you do it in the brief, they know that you'll be able to have a better opportunity to do it in the air. And that's how you set the tone. And when you come in there and crush that, the instructor's like, hell yeah, it's going to be a great flight. This kid's going to get a ton of good grades. And that's how it goes. Hey, pilot, does your pilot uniform make a short flight feel like a transcon slog? Flight Uniforms have reinvented aviation shirts with 3D stretch, stain repellents, and no wrinkles. These shirts are just plain comfortable and ready for takeoff right out of your rollerboard. Flight Uniform is trusted by more than 25,000 pilots, and their flagship flight shirt has over 1,500 five-star reviews. I've worn every pilot shirt out there, and if you know me, you know I only wear flight uniforms. Be the envy of every cockpit at flightuniform.com and get a special podcast exclusive discount with the code SpitfirePod20 to take 20% off your first order. That's SpitfirePod20, all one word, for 20% off your first order at flightuniform.com.
Absolutely. In fact, it's a bit of a misnomer. If you look at our curriculum or our syllabus guide, it says discussion items.
Bullshit. It's not discussion. It's like, it's a freaking monologue, man. You're just like, the student's just there rattling off for a solid 40 minutes. And then he's like, all right, let's get to the plane.
Exactly. What we want more than anything, I would tell you, and you recall this for sure, right, is we want a student that shows up and sets the tone for the flight from the brief going forward. Because I'll tell you what, Nick, you could take a student, as long as he's well prepared and he has memorized all of the procedures, you could take him and if he's a little bit behind in the plane, you can coach him. Mm-hmm. You can bring him along, right? Yep. But if he doesn't show up prepared at the brief, that to me speaks to a desire to want to be there.
Yeah.
And so it doesn't set a good tone going forward.
Yeah, you have to bring intensity with it, and you have they're going to keep shooting arrows until they find holes in your game. And so you have to be on hardcore defense to be able to do that. And you can. I'm telling you that you can do it. I'm just saying the expectation is high, and you should know that ahead of time. I think that you knowing that, I didn't know that when I first showed up, man. Les Bradfield, Air Force General now. That guy smashed me on my first flight. I had no idea because we didn't even have the internet back then.
So, but I will just to give you an idea of scale, right?
Yeah.
Of how many successful student naval aviators are finishing primary on any given year. Mm-hmm. We're talking about nearly 1,100.
Whoa.
So close to 1,100 student naval aviators on any given year are widely successful at completing the program and selecting and moving on to the next, phase, whether, intermediates or advanced flight training. So
that's awesome.
Yeah, it is tough. It is challenging, but, like I tell students who check in at Training Wing 5, I tell them, it's tough to walk. It's tough to climb that mountain, but the view from the top is just amazing.
Yeah, if you see me walking around the airport today and you see me dragging my bag, you're going to see a nice little set of gold wings on that bag because I'm so proud to be a naval aviator. I am so proud. I do want to touch on the helicopter world because you own all of the helicopter training in the Navy. And so will you walk me through what it's like in the helicopter community?
Sure. So if you get selected for helicopters, like I mentioned earlier, for the Navy, it's about 50% of our helicopter pilots, and Marine Corps sends a very large proportion as well, since they eventually will fly either Cobras, Hueys, or 53s. We also train tilt rotor pilots for the Navy and Marine Corps and helicopters as well. Now, not exclusively. The V-22 syllabus splits between some helicopter work and some multi-engine work in like a King Air equivalent out of Corpus Christi before they wing. But if you get selected for helicopters, you'll come to Southfield, what we call South Whiting. It's basically two airports side by side, Northfield and Southfield. Southfield has 3 helicopter squadrons and an instructor training unit. The 3 helicopter squadrons are Helicopter Training Squadron, or HT-8, 18, and 28.
What squadron were you in when you were a student?
I was with HT-18.
I was with HT-8, man. I was an 8-baller.
We were factory hand was our call sign.
It's so weird. What a weird time.
And the Hellions,
Yeah.
Hellions are HT-28.
That's a great.
We're actually a very exciting time here for us at Southfield. We're in the midst of a transition. Flying a 40-year-old Bell, venerable and very highly reliable aircraft, the Bell 206. It's the Jet Ranger, which you and I flew 20 some odd years ago. And now we're in the midst of a transition. We are transitioning to the TH-73, which is based on the Leonardo AW109, or Koala, as this would be the civilian equivalent.
It's an awesome machine.
It is much more capable, much more robust, larger aircraft, much longer legs in terms of endurance. Flies 20% faster than the Jet Ranger. We're cruising normally at 120 knots as opposed to 100.
Does it have a fully articulated head, or does it have an underslung head?
It's
do you remember?
You know what? It is the same. It's a very similar head. The difference with the head, however, is that you do have to manage your rotor speed.
Yeah. Okay.
Unlike 206, where you could drop the collective and then turn. In the TH-73, you definitely need to bring a little bit of collective in to manage your rotor speed.
Hopefully, it doesn't over torque like the 57.
No, we don't have. We haven't seen the over torque issues that we saw in the 57, and because of the different systems. The other thing you typically saw in the 57 that was challenging for young instructors who were not adequately defensively postured is ISO mount strikes. There's another challenge that we see.
Right. That's right.
So we have 65 of these aircraft on station. That effectively is our halfway mark. We're buying 130 overall. We still have over 100 of the TH-57. That's the 206 Jet Ranger, the Bell 206 Jet Ranger. We still have over 100 of those here as well. And we're sundowning those probably about 2 to 3 a month. We should be completely out of the Bell Jet Ranger business in less than 2 years' time.
What are they doing with the old helicopters?
So believe it or not, some of them are going to NASA. Some of them are going to our partners and allies. So Uruguay has already registered interest in buying a lot of these. Sorry, not a whole bunch, but like a number of them. Some of them are going to end up on sticks in front of
my house,
restaurants and museums and Whiting Field. And then
I'm bringing my trailer when I come down in a couple of weeks. My wife is going to be not happy.
And then, and a lot of them, you'll probably be shaving with some of them in 6 months.
Yeah. They were extended so long. So the footprint for training in the helicopter community follows a similar mindset where you learn basic how to fly a helicopter. And I'll tell you what, the hardest part is, I think, for me at least, was learning how to hover and doing that. And there's a couple different fields you guys use. Can you talk about the footprint of the basic familiarization?
Right. Yeah, no. So very similar model to primary. So you start out in ground school and you'll go to the simulators. I will tell you though, there is our new simulators for the TH-73 are absolutely remarkable. State-of-the-art systems with mixed and virtual reality. The visuals, you can dial in rain, snow, sleet, any sort of daylight or moonlight illumination. You can put aircraft carrier in the water and conduct your pattern approaches to the carrier. Very realistic environment for our simulators at TH-73. That's something that I'm super proud of, the team and their efforts for that acquisition process. Then after that, you go to contacts, you do like familiarization work, and you learn your hover skills. That's something that does not translate very well from, the T6. You're basically teaching an entirely different way of flying. And then after that, same thing. You'll do basic instrument work. You'll learn, how to scan your instruments. Then you'll do a more advanced instrument work. You'll get a solo in. Now, that's not an actual solo. It's what we call a buddy solo. So you'll actually fly with one of your peers.
Go out to Tallahassee and go to Momo's Pizza.
That's right. Yeah. And Florala. I mean, all of the old stomping grounds are still there. And then from there, we'll do formations as well. And then there's a stage where you do some more advanced tactics. You also fly night vision goggles, some night vision goggle work that you'll learn, some exposure to that. You'll get some exposure working with a air crewman in the back and the crew resource management and the call outs in between the cockpit and the air crewman in the back with a hoist. He'll also help you land the aircraft on what we call a pinnacle landing. So there's like a hill that we've built into one of our outlying fields where you'll have to land on the top of that. And the air crewman will provide you call outs to give you some additional situational awareness. And so every aircraft you'll fly in the fleet will all be multi-piloted. So we're trying to teach that early on. And all of the aircraft in the fleet, well, I take that back, with the exception of the Cobra, will all have a air crewman.
Yeah, which is super fun. It's funny. My buddy Rizzo ended up upside down on that pinnacle back, I don't know. Rizzo listens to the podcast. He knows who I'm talking about. But the instructor came in with a little sideways rollover, flipped the whole helicopter over.
Wow.
It wasn't even a Class Charlie mishap. That's
Oh, really?
Even with it rolling over.
Wow.
Oh, man.
That is, well, I'm not sure that's a story that I'd like to tell, but sure.
I know. Yeah. Well, he's at 06 now, so God bless him.
Well, he was a student? You're saying he was a student at the time?
He was a student, yeah.
Okay.
And the instructor came in with a little bit of side.
I promise his instructor is not an 06, that's for sure.
No, the instructor's probably looking for a job with me. For the person that's listening, the helicopter world is a totally different mindset than the primary world, because you have already proven that you can fly, and there's a lot more camaraderie with the instructors in the helicopter community, and it's a fun thing. My on-wing, his name was Mike Sutton. Mike actually, like, his son's in his 20s now, and he called me the other day. But when I was learning how to hover, here's a quick sea story for you. When I was learning how to do it, it was the flight before my check ride, and I was flying with Mike, and I could not do these no hover landings, right? I just kept coming in with sideways momentum. We flew for a 3.4. We refueled 4 times in that TH-57 back out at Spencer Field. And it was dark. It was dark when we got home. And I was just beat up. And man, he ran me through the ringer. He's like, you're going to get this. You're going to get this. And it took me so long to get it. And he called me the other day to talk about it. And it just goes to show you, like, he put forth that effort. Like, he could have banged out a 1.2, turned around, gone home, and gotten to see his wife, Michelle, and all the kids. But he didn't, because he cared. And that right there got me through the rest of my career. And that's what I owe it to him. So I think you get a really cool instructor cadre over there. And not that the primary thing's any better or worse, it's just a different mindset, and it's awesome. So it's a lot of fun as an HT instructor and as an HT student.
For sure. And then they'll also get a chance to do cross country. Did you do a cross country as a student in the HT8?
I did, but we went somewhere dumb. I don't even remember where we went. It wasn't that fun.
Sometimes you'll have an instructor that is from some obscure town in the middle of nowhere, and he insists on going home, and he drags 3 students with him. And it's just that's not going to happen with me.
Yeah.
I'm taking students to great places.
What'd you go do last weekend? Tell them what you did last weekend.
So last weekend, I took a T6. We landed at Tampa International. And that Friday night, we went to go see Zach Brown Band in concert. And I planned the cross country around that concert. It was absolutely fantastic. Saturday, went toured Ybor City and the riverfront.
Smoked some cigars.
Sunday, I went for a 10-mile run along the bay. It was absolutely fantastic.
Yeah.
So yeah, it was great. Next weekend, I'm going to Fort Lauderdale. More the same. So
that's
yes.
Awesome.
My cross country, when I was a student, I did primary. I went to Vegas And then in the HTs in advanced as a student, I went to Miami.
Oh, yeah. That's cool.
It was really good.
Okay, so there's some big changes happening at Whiting. You guys are ready to do some things that they've been talking about for decades. So will you roll into that? It's pretty new and pretty cool.
Sure. Yeah, no. So I would say that it's probably the most innovative change to the way naval aviation training for helicopters is being conducted in the last 40 years, probably since we transitioned from the Huey 40 years ago. So we are now taking volunteers for a program called COPTER. COPTER stands for Contractor-Operated Pilot Training Rotary.
Okay.
And that's modeled after an Air Force program that they used to train their 90 pilots a year. Now, by contrast, we are training 470 Navy, Marine, Coast Guard, and allied and partner student naval aviators on any given year. So the program is done by Helicopter Institute. You had Randy Rouse on one of your former podcasts.
That's right. So they're going out to Texas.
They're going out to Fort Worth. They're flying with Randy and his team out of Meacham Field there. And it's 50 hours. It's 40 hours of this familiarization contact work, 10 hours of instrument training. And then at the conclusion of that 3-month program, they will come to Southfield and enter directly, bypassing T6s and primary, enter directly into the advanced syllabus program. They'll fly for 112 hours and they'll leave here with a total of 162 hours of exclusively helicopter time. This, I assure you, will make for a better helicopter pilot. They'll have more reps and sets doing auto rotations, copter-only instrument approaches. They will be more proficient.
Yeah. So where are they doing their ground school?
Helicopter Institute is a FAR Part 141 accredited school, right? So they're doing ground school in stride with their flights. Now, this is interesting, actually, because this is some of the great feedback that I've heard from our students. I talked to you about this really robust and comprehensive process you had to go through before your familiarization or FAM0 flight, right? That's not happening at Meacham Field. Students are showing up on a Friday. They're introducing themselves to their officer in charge. They're getting an introduction to the reserve base there at Fort Worth. On Monday, they get an introduction to the company for Helicopter Institute. Tuesday, they are hovering a B-206B. They're
Sweet.
hovering a Jet Ranger.
Is everybody staying at JRB Fort Worth?
No, they're actually staying in hotels.
Okay.
Right next to.
Cool. So you've got Meacham Field. And if you're listening right now, I interviewed Randy at the beginning of the year, Randy Rolls from Helicopter Institute. I will link that in the show notes so you can go back and listen to it. He's probably the premier helicopter aviation company in America. And he's amazing. I think he does a great job and he's got a fantastic organization. He was able to secure this sweet contract. So if you choose to go do this, if you want to be a helicopter pilot, there's no reason to go waste your time flying the T6 for 6, 8, 9 months and dealing with the weather in Pensacola and all those things. Like, go out to Texas. It's clearing a million every single day and go fly and knock it out. And you can be a winged aviator faster. You can start your clock if that's your idea of starting your clock of your commitment after you get your wings. You can get to the squadron and get how much flight time could you possibly get at a squadron?
You conceivably stay an extra year in your initial tactical flight squadron, and you can become that much more proficient, end up becoming the squadron's weapons and tactics instructor.
Yeah. I mean, what an opportunity to fast forward your career. That's awesome. So you go sit with Randy, you knock out a bunch of initial flying. You guys are probably saving $10 million a pilot. I mean...
Yeah, so our push is for quality. What we're looking for is a quality helicopter, actually a better quality helicopter pilot than what we produce today. Certainly a super positive byproduct of skipping T6 primary are the savings to time for their career, and also there are savings for the taxpayers and to the government. And then also, so those are certainly byproducts, super productive byproducts of skipping the T6 primary. But the focus, again, is on a better quality helicopter pilot.
How long have you guys been doing that? Have you started doing it?
We have our third class has started. Each class is 8 students, and we'll have, I don't know if I mentioned it earlier, 33 Navy students and 15 Coast Guard students as part of this very first cohort or experiment, I guess, or the project.
Man, that's so interesting. Well, if that's your focus, then go do it. I'll also say if it's not your focus, then go the traditional route and see what you think of flying the T6. One of my life regrets is not being able to. I'm too old. We had a different plane back then.
You and I both flew the T-34, the Turbo Mentor.
The Turbo Mentor. Gosh, what a nasty plane. It was so smelly.
So the other project that we're working on is called CORE, and that's Copter-Only Replacement Pilot Syllabus. And this is effectively very similar to what Rainey and his team are doing, only conducted in-house exclusively by active duty instructor pilots. So what we've done is we've taken Air Force model, which wings, not gold wings, but silver wings, their students with 135 hours of helicopter time. We took that as a benchmark and created a syllabus at Southfield that wings naval aviators at the 135-hour mark. We did that by taking our existing syllabus and sprinkling in 23 to 24 additional flight hours throughout that syllabus. And again, we think that we're going to create a more capable helicopter pilot with the obvious byproducts of some cost and schedule savings as well.
Yeah, for sure. I bet your bosses are super happy that you're finding ways to save money. I mean, we can't, being out of the war on terror, there's been a significant drop in the top line budget across DoD. So that's good. So you have two different paths that lead to the same place where you could do it in Pensacola or you could go out and do it in Texas at Beecham Field.
Right.
That's so good. That's so good. And
it's a super exciting time to be here. A new project that we're doing, and this applies to the T6s, are those handful of students each week that are selected for strike are now provided an intermediate course in the T6s where they're learning tactical formation flying, and that's called Hellcat. And that Hellcat program is about 3 to 4 weeks of training, another 16 hours in the T6. And that'll get them sort of up to speed and ready to go learn how to fly the T-45.
Yeah, that's awesome. So much happening at Whiting Field, and there's so many different ways to get into the military and to have a lot of fun while you do it. We were also talking about our buddy Nick Sinopoli, right?
Right. Yeah. So Nick is partnered not only with the Helicopter Institute so that he could get his vision limiting device for instrument work incorporated into the syllabus there for the copter students, but we're also got an interim flight clearance approved here through our engineering department so that we can test that device, the Icarus device, here at Southfield. And we expect very promising results from that test.
The Icarus device is my favorite innovation in aviation. I'll look it up. I'll link my interview with Nick Sinopoli also in the show notes. The Icarus device, it mounts in front of you, and it is basically like glass that can change its visibility on command. And so you could go 0-0 to sky clear just with the touch of a button. And it's so cool. And he's such a mad scientist. So cool.
It just boggles my mind when I consider that we're flying multi-million-dollar brand new aircraft and multi-million-dollar simulator systems, and yet we have cardboard cutouts that we stick into our visor to simulate a vision limiting device.
Yeah, that's how you practice instruments. So funny. One last question: do you feel like people that have flight experience before they get to Whiting do a better job that come into the military with having already flown?
That's a good question. So to a degree, at least through contacts, we find that to be the case. So if you come here with a private pilot's license, you will be familiar with the concepts that are taught in ground school. You will be familiar with the basic tenets of a landing pattern, although ours is not square, ours is oval.
That's right.
But yeah, you might be a little bit ahead.
Okay.
But I have seen students that are Embry-Riddle aeronautical engineers, and you saw them too, I'm sure, as an IP. Embry-Riddle aeronautical engineers, commercially rated pilots that show up here, and they end up attriting it, unfortunately.
Yeah, they have a hard time. But not everybody.
We have other people, myself being an example, who came to Whiting with 0 flight time and no logbook.
Yeah, me too.
Right.
Yeah, I was a business major. I mean, come on. I'm a knuckle dragger. I'm the knuckle dragger, man. Like, if I can do it, anybody can do it.
Right. So what we look for is just heart, drive, determination, grit, perseverance. Those are the qualities that will get you by through flight school.
Yeah, you're right. Just go 110%. Go hard in the paint and you will succeed. And it's so worth it. And you get lifelong friends. And there will be days where it's the worst and there will be days where it's the best. And so it just is. Fez, thanks, sir. I really appreciate this opportunity to sit down. I think that we really did a good, awesome job demystifying what happens in aviation. Who knows? Like, should I not? There's nowhere to go. So thank you for spending time with the pilot.
Yeah, it's my pleasure. I love my job. I love what I do. With that said, I'm looking forward to the transition here in the next couple of years. But if anybody at all is interested in coming out and seeing this firsthand and witnessing what we do here at Whiting Field, feel free to reach out to me. Nick put my contact info in the show notes. And let's start a dialogue. If you're interested in the pipeline here, happy to provide you an exposure to what we do here in person.
That's awesome, man. I tell you, it used to be a big secret and now it's not. And I really appreciate you.
My pleasure.
This is important. Before you go, you need to know that 2024 is going to be unbelievably competitive in the world of pilot hiring. And you need to make sure that you separate yourself from the herd. The only way that you can guarantee that you'll land your dream job is by partnering with Spitfire Elite Interview Consulting. We are the only choice for application review and interview prep. We are the partners that you've been looking for from start to finish, and it's never too early to be part of our community. Just go over to my website, spitfireelite.com, and use the coupon code R4P to save yourself 10% on all of our services. Again, that's the letter R, the number 4, and the letter P to save 10%. So go out there and slay your interviews.